Kia ora guys, what's good? Welcome back to JDB Selects. Round 7 already. It is Easter round 2, which means we have football across 5 days this week. The absolute dream. Before we get into my tips for round 7, let's as always look back at last week. So last week we tipped 5 out of 8 games. Really should have been 6 out of 8 if I wasn't biased towards the Warriors. I think Mick Innes touched on it in commentary too. You almost tip the Panthers autonomously. You don't even think about it. You look at the games and just go Panthers, Panthers, Panthers. That obviously hasn't been the case this season with the Dolphins getting the chockies on Thursday night. And then the Broncos were, fairly ordinary against a very spirited Roosters side. 5 out of 8 for the week. Should have been 6 out of 8 if I wasn't biased. But it is what it is. Still running at 60% for the season, which is well above average. So we certainly take that. Here's hoping for that first elusive 8 out of 8 this week. Now, if you don't know by now, we do run a JDB Selects tipping comp. All the details to join are shown on screen now. We have 3 amazing prizes up for grabs, including 2 grand final tickets, a 2026 jersey of your choice, and a $50 NRL shop voucher. So get involved if you are keen. There's nothing to lose, although if you are joining now, you are slightly behind the 8 ball, having missed the opening 7 rounds, but anything is possible with 20 rounds of football still to be played. Alright, and speaking of the tipping comp, big shout out to Vegas22, M. Lincoln, Jab, D-Way, Jake, and everyone in that top 20. Matt Murley, Bulldog, NRL 2025, you Bullet. Congratulations to all of you tipsters. Great results. No perfect rounds last week, at least to the naked eye when I checked. So let's see if anyone can pull that off this week. Good luck with your tips, everybody. Here are my personal tips and predictions for round 7. Alright, round 7 gets underway on Thursday night with the 8th placed Manly Warringah Sea Eagles taking on the 10th placed St. George Illawarra Dragons at 4 Pines Park. Starting first with the Sea Eagles, they must have left their attack at the airport in Sydney and were lucky to even be close to the Cronulla Sharks, eventually going down 18 points to 24. Manly had the lion's share of both possession and territory, but hardly troubled the Sharks' defence, with 2 of their 3 tries coming from opportunistic intercepts deep on their own line. DCE was awfully quiet, only recording a very, very low 128 kick metres, which by his standards is ridiculously low, and he went missing for long periods of that game until it was far too late. There really wasn't anyone that stood out as overly positive or overly negative. It was just a really bland and lackluster team showing from the Sea Eagles. And in terms of teams list, Hamoli Olakau'atu played through a shoulder injury, so will likely need scans this week. Both Jason Saab and Lachlan Croker are currently listed to be available for selection this week. And as for the Dragons, their unbeaten streak against the Gold Coast Titans at WIN Stadium extended to 7 games with a comprehensive 38-12 point win. The Saints' left edge was humming, with Valentine Holmes producing his best game in the Red V, converting 5 of their 7 tries, including 1 of his own. Dylan Egan was also unbelievable in his 80-minute stint that saw him changing from middle forward to back row and even bagging his first NRL 4-pointer. Despite scoring nearly 40 points, Lachlan Ilias still continued to dish up some ordinary options and wasn't involved in much of the good, which really limits the impact of the likes of Moses Suli and Jaden Sewer on the right. I don't want to be too negative though after a win, but it will continue to be a problem against stronger oppositions with good kicking games. And in terms of teams list for the Dragons this week, the money man himself, show me the money, Christian Tuipulotu left the field in the second half with a hamstring strain and will be in doubt this week. Alright, looking at the 2 sides head to head, the Dragons have a great record against the Sea Eagles. They've won 8 of the last 12 games. Manly though, they have won 6 of the last 7 games at 4 Pines Park against the Red V. Ooh, as always, these Thursday night games tend to be coin flips. Very, very close battle here. You've got the Sea Eagles who are a wee bit out of form, and the Dragons potentially starting to find a bit of form. But for me, I think the long kicking game of DCE should get the job done here. I touched on it just a bit earlier that the Dragons should struggle against teams with good kicking games because Flanagan and Ilias just can't match that. So DCE was awfully quiet last week. I think he bounces back this week and gets his side home. But I am just going to take the Sea Eagles here by 1 to 12 points. Before we get into the next breakdown, I just wanted to let you know that our JDP Selects Patreon has been absolutely flying this season. Last week we hit Ewan Aiken first try score at 17s. Angus Crichton anytime at 450, Rockaberry anytime at 390, Xavier Coates first try scorer, Xavier Coates 2+ tries. We went 5 out of 8 on our best bets, and you can get access to all of these for only $10 a week, plus our cutting edge NRL data tools, cheat sheets, try scoring analysis, head-to-head stats, everything you need to land a punt, to beat your friends in a tipping comp, have a bit of fun, etc, etc. It's all there for just $10 a week. Big thank you to all of our current members, bloody amazing, so thank you guys so much. Anyway, back to the next game. Alright, moving now to the first of 2 games on Good Friday. Starting first with the first place Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs taking on the 5th place South Sydney Rabbitohs at Accor Stadium. Alright, starting first with the Doggies, they will be fresh off their first bye of the season, but the week prior grinded out a 20-0 win against the Newcastle Knights, and in doing so have a perfect 5-0 record to start the season for the first time since 1993. Canterbury dominated field position, possession, and almost every key stat for the entirety of the first half, but were unable to cross the stripe until the second, when Phoenix Crosland was sent to the sin bin for tripping Bulldogs halfback Tony Sexton in the 45th minute, and momentum shifted. The Bulldogs capitalised on this advantage as Jack Todd stormed over for a try seconds later, pushing their lead to 14-0. The Knights continued to battle valiantly, but when fatigue finally set in, the Dogs' agile middle forwards went straight through the teeth. It certainly wasn't the most memorable game of the season, but another impressive showing from the Dogs, who continued to cement themselves as top 4 contenders. And in terms of teams list for the Doggies, both Matt Burton and Viliami Kikau are listed to return from their MCL injuries this week, which would be a huge double inclusion for the Dogs. Satili Tupanua is also available this week after serving his suspension. And as for the Rabbitohs, they fell short against the North Queensland Cowboys in a tightly contested game at Optus Stadium in Perth, with the Cowboys emerging victorious 24 points to 16. The game began as a defensive arm wrestle, with points hard to come by in the first half. South Sydney started the second half strongly, with Jai Arrow crashing over in the 43rd minute to reclaim the lead at 10 points to 6 following Latrell Mitchell's conversion. However, controversy certainly struck when Jack Whiten was penalised for a hip drop tackle on Scott Drinkwater, which clearly shifted the momentum back towards the Cowboys. To their credit though, the Bunnies, they never gave up and were pretty resilient given the injury toll they've been dealing with. I thought Latrell Mitchell was decent at 5'8". His long kicking game was obviously exceptional and is one of his, great strengths, and he had a good hand in all of their points, but his greatest strength is without a doubt his running game, and he did have limited chances to show that, which I think could have been the difference. Despite the loss though, I'm really impressed with the Rabbitohs this season, and even in the defeat, they lost no admirers. And in terms of teams list for the Bunnies, Josh Schuster, Tyrone Munro, and Campbell Graham are all listed to be available this week. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Rabbitohs, they have won 6 of the last 7 against the Bulldogs. That includes 5 of the last 6 at Accor. Ooh, cracking game this. I do like the Doggies here though. The Dogs have proved that their defense is arguably the best in the competition right now, and if they are boosted by the returns of both Matt Burton and Viliami Kikau, it is hard to see how the South Sydney Rabbitohs can get up without the likes of Walker and a few others. So for me, the Doggies get the Chockies, but just by 1 to 12 points. Alright, and the final game on Good Friday sees the 14th placed Dolphins taking on the 2nd placed Melbourne Storm at Suncorp Stadium. Starting first with the Dolphins, they recorded their first ever win against the Panthers in emphatic fashion, cruising home to a 30 to 12 point win. The Finns produced some brilliant long-range tries, with the likes of Farnworth, Avarillo and Hamaso showcasing their speed. After a slow start to the season, the Hammer has finally caught fire, nabbing a hat-trick and reminding everyone just how damaging he can be when he's pushing around the ruck and given half a chance in open space. Despite the 30 points scored, it was their defence that was the most impressive part. Outside of that big blue from Jack Bostock, they really should have just kept Penrith to 6 points, which is truly impressive considering they were on the wrong side of both territory and field position, but scrambled really well, especially on their edges. It was easily the Dolphins' best showing of the year, and hopefully they can build on it. Now, in terms of teams list for the Finnies, Ray Stone is free to return this week, having served his 1-week suspension. And as for the Storm, they extended their decade-long dominance over the Warriors with a commanding 42 to 14 point victory at a sold-out Amy Park, marking their 17th consecutive win against the Auckland-based side. The Storm unleashed a first half masterclass massacre, racing to a 36-0 lead at halftime with 6 unanswered tries, capitalising on the Warriors' errors and a sin bin to Jackson Ford, who was penalised for impeding a Melbourne Storm attacker. Winger Xavier Coates continued his remarkable run against the Wars, crossing twice to bring his personal tally to 12 tries in just 8 games against the side. The Storm weren't able to get out of first gear in the second half, but their clinical attack in the first 40 exploited the Warriors' defensive lapses to secure their 4th win of the season. And in terms of teams list for Melbourne, Jerome Hughes failed to return in the second half after suffering a shoulder injury. Coach Craig Bellamy did say it was precautionary to not play him in the second half, so there is a high chance that he does play. Nelson Asafa-Solomona and Will Warbrick are both looking to overcome concussions that have kept them sidelined for the past few weeks. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Storm, they have won all 3 encounters to this point, and I think they win the 4th. I am going to take the Storm here 13+. I do think they should do a number on the Dolphins, mainly because I'm still upset they beat the Warriors, but no, they should beat the Dolphins here. Melbourne should be the lock of the week. Alright, moving now to just the first of 2 games on Saturday, starting first with the 6th placed NZ Warriors taking on the 3rd placed Brisbane Broncos over here in Tamaki Makaurau. Starting first with the Warriors, their decade-long struggles against the Melbourne Storm reached a grim new chapter with a crushing 42-14 point defeat at a sold-out Amy Park. The Storm extended their head-to-head dominance to 17 consecutive victories, dating all the way back to 2015, in a match that saw Melbourne unleash a devastating first half blitz. They raced out to a 36-0 lead after half-time, and the loss was compounded by losing co-captain James Fisher-Harris in the opening 10 minutes and Jackson Ford spending time in the sin bin. The Warriors showed some resilience after the break, outscoring the Storm 14 points to 6, but the first half damage was irreversible. Young gun Leka Halasima powered through 3 defenders for a 55th minute try, while Rocco Berry looked good in his first game back, and Luke Metcalf also added a late consolation. I know I'm probably biased here, and you can shoot me down in the comments, I don't care, but I don't think the Warriors were that bad early on. They just went behind, heads went down, and they just couldn't turn the momentum around and paid the price. We'll have to wait another year, unfortunately, to break the curse against the Storm, as the two sides won't meet again in the regular season. But hopefully, maybe the grand final, who knows? Maybe we'll take them down in the grand final. Shit. Alright, in terms of teams list for the Wars too, obviously James Fisher-Harris picked up that pec injury, so we'll be set for a few weeks on the sidelines at least. Chance Nickel-Klukstad also failed his HIA, so will be unavailable this week, which will cause a fair few reshuffles. And as for the Broncos, they couldn't recapture their round 1 form against the Roosters, getting out-enthused in front of their home fans, 26 points to 16. Brisbane were forced to defend for most of the first quarter, but managed to only concede 1 try before a sin bin to Billy Smith gave them some momentum before a sin bin of their own reversed fortunes. Brisbane showed promise in the second half when Jesse Arthur's crossed for a try to narrow the margin to 20 points to 16, but they lacked the same desire as the Roosters down the stretch and struggled to match the physicality in the middle of the park, and their poor discipline and missed tackles proved costly. I think I said last week that the Broncos just don't seem to want to do the hard stuff, and that performance was so evident of that, always looking for the flashy play, not showing enough mongrel through the middle, and I guess seemingly worried about chipping their fingernail polish. Reece Walsh unfortunately hasn't been the same player since Joseph Suaalii nearly decapitated him during State of Origin, which to me is, really sad to watch. And deep down, I really do hope that he can regain some of that same level of confidence that he seems to be lacking currently. Now, in terms of teams list for the Broncos, Jesse Arthurs was ruled a Category 1 HIA, so will be unavailable this week. Jordan Ricky, though, is free to return to the side after serving his 1-game suspension. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Broncos, they have won 3 of the last 5 meetings. The Warriors, though, they have won 5 of the last 7 games at Go Media Stadium. Ooh, now this is where the bias really comes in. Last week, I backed the Wars to be on the right side of history if they were to beat the Storm. But this week, I'm unfortunately going to take the Broncos by 1 to 12 points. I think Broncos just have far too much speed on the edge, and that's the one thing the Warriors severely lack, especially given they are going to be missing quite a few outside backs now. I assume the likes of Ed Kosi might come into the side with CNK sideline. So I just feel like the Broncos will have a bit more go forward through the middle and will burn the Warriors on the edges. I hate to say it, but yeah, Broncos this week, 1-12. Alright, and the final game on Saturday is your 2025 Spoon Bowl, with the 15th placed Sydney Roosters taking on the 16th placed Penrith Panthers at Allianz Stadium. Alright, starting first with the Roosters, who were able to avenge their 50-point round 1 loss to the Broncos with a gutsy 26-12 point win at Suncorp Stadium on Friday. The Roosters had all the ball early on, but struggled to find their way through the Broncos line, until a couple of moments from Billy Smith rewarded the Chooks with a well-deserved lead at the break, well and truly making up for his 10 minutes on the sideline. Despite a shaky start to the second half, the Roosters were able to tidy up their handling and defend their way to a win. The kicking game of Hugo Savala was crucial in the second stint, regularly managing to find space either in front or beside Walsh and consistently turn the ball over right on the Broncos line, forcing them to work it out from deep within their own end. It's pretty clear to me that his inclusion in place of Chad Townsend had an immediate impact on the side, and it's now his jersey to lose until Sam Walker returns from injury. It's been so hard to get a read on the Roosters this year, but they may have truly turned a corner with this new halves pairing. And if we have a look at the teams list for the Roosters, Mark Nawaqanitawase was ruled out late with a hamstring injury, and given the form of Billy Smith may struggle to force his way back into the side, the Roosters currently have 10 players listed with unknown returns, so do keep an eye out on teams list Tuesday in case of any surprise inclusions. And as for the Panthers, their fall off continued, now having gone from 5 grand finals in a row to 5 straight losses, getting thumped by the Dolphins at Suncorp 30 points to 12. Penrith had 65% of territory and 55% of possession, but couldn't find their way through the Dolphins' defence. They looked as disorganised and frazzled as I can remember, and were torn apart on the edges by the speed of the Dolphins, with the inexperience of their outside backs showing. Dylan Edwards was best on ground for the Panthers, showcasing his trademark reliability and making nearly 250 metres with 9 tackle breaks. I do wonder how much the pressure is starting to weigh on Nathan Cleary. He's always been at his best when he's making others look good, but now it does seem that Penrith are expecting him to make something happen out of nothing, rather than off the back of earning it, and it's starting to show us some pretty uncharacteristic errors creeping into his game. I did say last week that I wasn't quite ready to write the Panthers off yet, but I mean after that display it's quite hard to see them even making the top 8 right now. And in terms of teams list for Penrith, Jack Cole should be free to return this week after missing last week due to concussion. Mitch Kenny and Brian To'o are both fighting to return from injury, but their returns are still yet to be confirmed. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, they met earlier this season with the Roosters snapping a 10-game skid against the Panthers. Penrith have also won 3 of the last 4 games at Allianz. Oh man, this is an absolute danger game for me. I have no idea what's going to happen. Both sides have been incredibly poor to start the season. Yes, the Roosters have shown a wee bit more, but with the likes of Edwards, Yeo and Cleary, the Panthers are never out of it. And so for me, I just can't see them losing 6 straight games. I just can't not take them. So with no confidence, I'm taking the Panthers 1-12. Jeez, if they lose 6, it's well and truly game over. Alright, moving now to the first of just 2 games on Easter Sunday, starting first with the 11th placed Gold Coast Titans taking on the 4th placed Canberra Raiders at Cbus Super Stadium. Alright, starting first with the Gold Coast, they suffered a comprehensive 38-16 point defeat to the St. George Illawarra Dragons at WIN Stadium, extending their losing streak to 7 at the ground as defensive lapses and a mounting injury crisis compounded their struggles. Despite David Fifita's standout performance with 206 run meters, 4 offloads and 10 tackle breaks, the Titans conceded 6 tries in a 6-minute first half blitz that saw the Dragons surge to a 24-4 point lead at half-time. Coach Des Hasler faces further headaches with Brock Gray's 66-minute sin bin for a dangerous tackle and an injury-depleted squad now featuring 5 players with fewer than 10 NRL games experience. The loss certainly leaves the Gold Coast anchored in the bottom 4 ahead of this critical Easter Sunday clash, with captain Tino Fa'asuamaleaui's return from suspension offering little consolation for a side now urgently needing reinforcements and a bit of confidence. Now, in terms of teams list for the Titans, as I just mentioned, Tino Fa'asuamaleaui is free to return this week, having served his 1-week suspension. Winger Jojo Fifita is also expected to make his return from a thigh injury, while speedster Alofiana Khan Pereira is also close to making his return, be it this week or next. And as for the Raiders, they delivered a commanding performance, dismantling the Parramatta Eels 50 points to 12 at TIO Stadium to secure their 4th win of the season. Dominating from the outset, the Raiders executed a clinical attack, scoring 8 tries to 2, with forward Joseph Tapine opening the scoring in the 6th minute and Hudson Young notching up a double. Canberra's pack laid the foundation, with Big Red Corey Horsburgh amassing 216 run meters and Tapine adding 195 of his own, supported by a nearly flawless completion rate. 5'8" Ethan Strange executed play superbly, contributing a try and multiple line break assists, while young fullback Kyle Weeks and winger Xavier Savage terrorised the Eels' edges. Now look, I do know they played the worst team in the comp, but it really shows just how balanced and dangerous the Raiders side really is when they do start firing on all cylinders. And in terms of teams list for the Green Machine, Zach Hosking is eyeing a return from a hand injury this week, but outside of that I would expect the same 17 to be named. Looking at the two sides head to head, the Raiders, they have won 11 of the last 13 games against the Titans. That includes 4 straight. The Raiders have also won 6 of the 8 games played between the two sides at Cbus Super Stadium. And for that and a few other reasons, clearly I am going to take the Canberra Raiders here by 1 to 12 points. Like I just mentioned, I think the Raiders have a really balanced pack. They don't have, I guess, a star-studded team on paper, or at least name value anyway, but they really do complement each other so well. And when they do all hum and push in the same direction, they're a pretty scary opposition for any side. And I do think they'll be too strong for a fairly damaged and depleted Titans outfit. So yeah, Canberra for me, 1 to 12. Alright, moving now to the final game on Easter Sunday, with the 12th placed Newcastle Knights aiming up against the 9th placed Cronulla Sharks at McDonald Jones Stadium. Alright, starting first with Newcastle, they suffered a comprehensive 20 to 4 point defeat against the West Tigers, barely making it onto the score sheet. Despite entering the match with a 7-game win streak against the Tigers, the Knights conceded 4 tries and managed only a late consolation effort through 5'8" Fletcher Sharp in the 79th minute, failing to convert the opportunity. Their attack has been awful all season, and even though they were missing key players including Cogger, Saifiti and Adam Elliott, they produced a second consecutive low-scoring outing, managing just 6 total points in their previous 2 games. It's pretty crazy the fact they've only scored 46 points all season, yet somehow 12th on the ladder. I mean, that just shows how poor some of the other teams have been, like, my word. It's certainly going to be a long season for those in the Hunter. And in terms of teams list for the Knights, they have a huge list of players currently unavailable. That includes Dylan Lucas, Tyson Gamble, Jacob Saifiti, James Schiller, Jack Hetherington, Jack Cole and Adam Elliott, whose returns are all listed as unknown. And as for the Sharks, they secured a hard-fought 24 to 18 point victory over the Manly Sea Eagles at Optus Stadium off the back of some solid defence. The opening 30 minutes saw both sides grind through errors, with Manly's attack repeatedly thwarted by Cronulla's line speed. The Sharks managed to capitalise on their limited opportunities, with Braden Trindle setting up 2 for Sam Stonestreet in the corner and fullback Will Kennedy producing a piece of individual brilliance to increase the Sharks' lead. Cronulla's bench forwards also played a critical role, with Toby Rudolph and Tom Hazelton shining, with the latter scoring the final try and recording 153 metres in his 15 runs. While their attack certainly wasn't flash and came up with 2 intercept tries, their defence was top shelf, and Manly could count themselves lucky they were even given a sniff late. The win marked Cronulla's 5th victory in their 6 meetings against Manly under coach Craig Fitzgibbon, and more importantly, snapped a 2-game skid. Now, in terms for the Sharks this week, AFB left the field very late with what looked to be a groin strain, which Craig Fitzgibbon did say wasn't too severe, but that he would be assessed this week. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Sharks, they have won 4 of the last 5 games overall, but the Knights have won 4 of the last 5 games against the two teams at McDonald Jones Stadium. Pretty straightforward one for me. You've got the worst attack in the comp going up against a fairly solid defensive outfit who can also score plenty of points. Cronulla, 13+. Alright, and the final game of your Easter weekend kicks off on Monday night with the 7th placed West Tigers taking on the last placed Parramatta Eels at CommBank Stadium. Starting first with the Tigers, who delivered a commanding 20-4 victory over the Newcastle Knights at McDonald Jones Stadium, snapping a 7-game losing streak against their opponents and showcasing significant defensive and attacking improvements under coach Benji Marshall. The Tigers struck early through winger Sania Taruva, who finished a slick backline movement initiated by halves Lockie Galvin and Jerome Luai before centre Stafford Toa sliced through the Knights' defence for a 20-metre solo try. Fullback Dream Buller sealed the result with a clever grubber and chase try in the 32nd minute, while Adam Dewey added a second half 4-pointer and 2 conversions. This performance marked a stark turnaround from their round 1 heartbreak against the Knights and certainly solidified the Tigers' growing identity as a disciplined, physically imposing football side. Now, in terms of teams list for the Tigers, Gerald Skelton re-aggravated his hamstring injury and will be in doubt this week. And as for the poor old Eels, they couldn't string together back-to-back wins, instead getting absolutely flogged by the Canberra Raiders in Darwin, 50 points to 12. The loss marks the Eels' worst start to a season since 2018, leaving them with a dismal 1-5 record. Parramatta were completely outplayed, seeing just 44% of the ball and finishing the game with a shocking 66% completion rate. Their middles conceded some really soft tries early on, and things only got worse as fatigue started to kick in as the game wore on. Bailey Simonson, though, was easily Para's best in his first game of the year and looked really strong and physical, making nearly 200 run meters with 81 of those coming post-contact. Dylan Brown also showed tiny moments of brilliance, but once again went missing and had limited chances on the front foot. Another really poor showing from the Eels, who are extremely lucky in my opinion to have even won a game this year. Now, in terms of teams list for Parramatta, Jake Tungor is listed to return either this week or next from his hip injury, while Mitchell Moses is still eyeing a return in round 9. Taking a look at the two sides head-to-head, the Eels, they have won 10 of the last 13 games against the Tigers, a very strong record there. West, though, they have won the last 3 meetings between the two teams at CommBank Stadium, and the Tigers have also won 2 of the last 3 games on Easter Monday. And so because of that, I do like the Tigers in this one by 1 to 12 points. The Eels have been absolutely awful, and the Tigers are just on the up right now. They're full of confidence, they're scoring points, their middles are aiming up, they're holding teams to low scores, they're playing for each other, and they're just on a roll right now, and it makes me pretty happy to see. As a neutral, seeing the Tigers win and win well makes me happy as a league fan. The world is slightly healing. We just need the Warriors to beat the Storm, but yeah, we won't go back there again. Anyway, Tigers for me, 1 to 12. Bang, just like that, we're done for round number 7. Thank you as always for watching. If you are still here, hit that subscribe button, leave a like on the video, drop your tips and predictions in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next one.